Hello and welcome to the Sideline Live podcast. My name is Orla Keeling and I am the host of the podcast, where every week we bring you a brand new episode with guests ranging from Olympic champions to local heroes, coaches, support staff and anybody involved in the world of sport. Each week we will dive into different topics, including current affairs in sport, identity, skill, mindset, coaching, and also shine a light on those flying under the radar. So tune in for brand new episodes, new stories, and new insights you've never heard before. This episode is brought to you by Tenaris Recovery, an Irish-owned brand focusing on helping athletes recover smarter, rise higher, and live stronger. In elite sport and on this podcast, we often talk about training, performance, and preparation. But recovery is often the element that gets overlooked and yet one of the keys to reaching your performance potential. Tenaris provide products including compression boots to massage guns and recovery tools, and their range is designed to support muscle recovery and overall well-being. So whether you're balancing busy training weeks, multiple sports, competing at the highest level, or just want to feel better after training, recovery is key. Tenaris are focused on making high quality recovery accessible for all, and as listeners of this podcast you can receive an exclusive discount code Sideline15 in all caps for a discount off your purchase on their website tenarisrecovery.com, which is available in the description box of the episode. Recover better, rise higher, live stronger with Tenaris. Okay, delighted to be joined by Gerard O'Donnell, sprint coach, relay coach, national champion. Have I ticked all the boxes?
Most of them, I think, yeah, enough of them.
Yeah. We have a lot of listeners not from athletics background. Can you give us your elevator pitch?
Yeah, so at the minute I'm a sprints coach, a full-time coach with a group in Dublin Sprint, myself and Nadine Sinnott, coach there, and former guest on the podcast, Jeremy Lyons, I suppose, is the initiator of that group, and he stepped away, but myself and Nadine run that group now with high performance athletes down to club level athletes. I'm also a coach with the National Football 4 team, so the men's and the women's teams. And then I suppose I do external kind of work as well, then S&C work with athletes, with team sports players, and then speed work with individuals as well on the side and bits and pieces, and coach education stuff as well. So yeah, formerly I worked with Athletics Ireland for 5 or 6 years as a development officer and then coach education manager, and then year before Paris decided to try and be full-time coach and see can a career be made of that.
And how has that been, trying to be full-time in athletics?
Trying is still the word, yeah. It's tough. You know, it's not a traditional role on the athletics sphere, a full-time paid coach. You know, there's no paid coaches within the association, so it is a very much forge your own path. But there's other people trying to do it as well now, and you have to try it to see will it work. And there's obviously external gigs and bits and pieces that you can pick up your top ups of income, and that's fine as well because it's generally coaching related too. So yeah, trying to find a way. It's going all right so far, and obviously there's bits of support through the association as well and things like that. But yeah, we're still paying the rent, so it's not too bad.
Good. Is there a good support network even informally between sprint coaches in Ireland?
In terms of helping each other out and mentoring and linking in, sharing ideas, I think there is. Yeah. I suppose the same in any kind of field. There's people you pick up the phone to, and people that will call you and say, "Here, what do you think of this, and this?" And everybody has their own kind of network of people that there's the 10 top coaches all talk to each other every day of the week, but. Yeah. There are certain people that you'd veer towards, I suppose, people that have similar ideas to you, or people that have alternative ideas that you think might help you. And then I suppose that the best ones are at championships, especially. You end up, you're at the dining hall, 3 meals a day, you're at the track, you can ask people what they're doing, you can see them training, you can meet, go for a coffee just for a chat, and that's where a lot of the knowledge is shared, I suppose, rather than a formal, right, I'm going to ring you on Friday and let's talk coaching for an hour.
Yeah. Is there, when you go away or abroad, or do you even bounce stuff off international coaches from other countries, or is that kind of you keep your secrets to yourself?
I suppose, again, it depends on the personality. Like, you get to know people, you see the same faces at a lot of the championships, so you give them a nod and a hello, and then the next time you'll have a brief chat, and then the next time you'll figure out who they actually are and what they do for a living, and you realise they're a former Olympic champion from the 80s, and you're like, geez, I should have been, if I knew that in the first place, I would never approach them. There would be, I'd have certain people that I'd know, and I'd have gone to conferences they're speaking at, and then you chat to them afterwards, and then they become just kind of friends and colleagues nearly as well. So I have a few people like that it's always good to see at the championships, and then you can grab them for a coffee and talk shop as well and see how they're doing it. Because it's the same thing. I know a few coaches in England who have done similar to me. They're like, right, I need to try and do this as my career. And I'm like, how are you managing it? And they're like, struggling. And I'm like, yep, me too. So it's good to know that it's not all roses everywhere.
Yeah. How did you watch the Netflix series Sprint?
No, I didn't. I avoided it like the plague. That I am not the target market for that. I'm not in the slightest. Yeah, I'd say like if you're a Formula One driver, are you watching the F1 show? I'd say not. Like not at all. No, it's not. From what I heard of it as well, I would not. I think I'm in it actually. I think there's some clips of me in the background in Budapest. Yeah, on the warm-up track. So I'm in it. Yeah, I couldn't watch something that I'm in. Start of the show. No, I wouldn't. So it's mainly Noah Lyles who I'm not. That wouldn't draw me in either. So. I'm not the target audience for that, so I left it alone. Rather than watch it and give out about it, I just let everybody else watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah. How do you find the popularity in the sport now, and the likes of those, that Netflix documentary being one of them, but also with the success we've had in Ireland, the level of interest from people that aren't in the sport that for lack of a better term, that don't get it or get what it takes? How have you found that?
It's great. Like the thing about Paris especially was like, you're going to have lads sitting over a pint asking about athletics, which at times is a bit grating, but I'd always encourage us. Like if they're talking about it, that's a good thing. That means they might watch it the next time around again. And if you shut them down and maybe tell them some of the harsh realities, then they may not turn on RTE for the national championships next year. And that's the opposite of what you want. So no, it's only positive. Like if people are coming up with nonsense ideas and they're tweeting garbage the same way the lad is sitting on the couch talking about Liverpool, Man United, about athletics, once it's nothing too harsh or personal, then that's a good thing because they're talking about athletics. That means they're watching it and they actually have a bit of an interest in it, and they think they know better than the lad who's trained for 350 days a year. So yeah, you have to have, all sorts are attracted to all sports. So we need the good, the bad and the ugly watching the athletics as well. So no, it's a numbers game. Get people in, and that growing is only positive, I think, yeah.
What are the harsh realities that we don't get from the outside?
That's a tough question, I suppose, without being too revealing. No, I suppose it is just the hard work of the side of things. It's over 300 days of the year, 330 probably days of the year of training and coaching, and even more sessions than that within those weeks. For you're looking at pocket money at the end of the day for most of the coaches getting €0. A lot of the athletes getting €0 coming away from it in debt. Athletes that are making it to Europeans and World Championships who literally are going back to live with mum and dad when they get home or back to their full-time job. So I suppose those are kind of the things that people won't really realise as much, that it is generally, even to some of the highest levels, it's a sport that's done for the love of it rather than, fame or fortune, for sure. Yeah, there's nobody going away with a property ladder, or big investments at the end of their career, no matter what level they really reach.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing, since I'm not actually in the sport, but obviously covering it with the page and covering all sports, but particularly with all the success we've had, that's the one thing I find very hard now. It's all the big four. Well, the Olympic sports, and now probably you could call it as the big four from commercial side of things. But again, we only talk about them at the Worlds, at the Olympics, barely the Worlds. It was on RTE for the first time since '95 this year. So, that's hard. That is hard. But on the flip side, I don't want to focus too much on the negatives. Yeah. Why do you do it? Why do you coach?
I love coaching. Yeah. No, it's definitely a passion of mine now, which isn't something that I ever thought it would be. As an athlete, I was very dedicated myself, and I was kind of like as a juvenile, I was winning medals at Connacht's nationals in all sorts of events. High jump was a main one, and then we had really good relay teams. I'm Carrick and Shannon, so we had a national record at one stage, I think, under 15 indoor 4x2 relay, and the town only had 1,500, 2,000 people at the time, so that was a big deal. High jump hurdles, long hurdles, short hurdles, relays, sprints, and then going through, I was kind of a bit of a realist. I think with my own ability, I was like, well, I'm not that fast, but I can hurdle and I can high jump, but I'm not going to go to the European under 20s or anything. But then as I moved through, it was kind of like into the senior ranks and I was focusing on 400 hurdles then, and it was more of a kind of like see how fast I can run. I had lots and lots of injuries always. Like I've never quite got that season where I was healthy all year to achieve what I needed to. And then it was like, try and get a national medal maybe at some stage. And that went right on through mid-20s. And then the year that I actually won my first national medal, it was a bit of an anticlimax initially, because I kind of knew on the start line that I was going to get bronze unless a disaster happened. And I was injured for a lot of the year as well. Or not, I had an injury that I couldn't hurdle for a lot of the year, and then I was back hurdling only a few weeks. And Jeremy Lyons said to me, he's like, look, you might as well enter the short hurdles as well as the long hurdles, so the 110 hurdles plus the 400 metre hurdles, even though I'd never actually ran a senior 110 hurdles race before, ever. And anyway, the 400 hurdles was on first, ran that, got the bronze, and I was like, that was all right. And then the 110 hurdles was later in the day, and I was like, geez, I could probably get a medal in this as well, because everyone's kind of at a similar-ish level, except for Ben Reynolds, who was away and clear. He could warm up, and then I ended up winning it. And I was everyone's like, did you just win nationals? I was like, yeah, I think so. So anyway, after that, Jeremy had the great wisdom to be like, maybe let's focus on the short hurdles for the winter. And then literally 3 races later, I was at the European Indoor Championships. So like that was never on the horizon in any shape or form. So that I was 26 at that stage before my kind of international career kicked off, or even my national career. So then won a few more national titles, got a few more vests after that. But even all through that, I was like, I'm never going to be a coach still. But I was, suppose, driven in that way, that I did kind of lead things, even with the club at home, I suppose. And then even in the group with Jeremy, I would have kind of been, well, I suppose I was one of the older athletes as well, along with like Craig Lynch. And we were kind of setting standards for each other. And then people were kind of following in behind. And then Jeremy would have kind of saw that and be like, yeah, you're kind of leading the way on these sort of things. And I studied physical therapy then, because I was like, at one stage, like, well, I want to stay involved in hyper and athletics in some way. I'm not going to be a coach, because that's not a job. So at least if I study physical therapy, I'll still be working with athletes. I'll be going to meets. I'll be doing whatever. I'll be involved in the circuit, that kind of way. And then I suppose it's just pushed on from there. I ended up doing a master's then in, I worked in that for a couple of years, kind of self-employed while I was training. But then like anything else, it's like to push that on to the next level, it's evenings and weekends with teams and things, that's when training is for me as an athlete. So I did a master's in coaching science in UCD in 2018. I suppose that was kind of a bit of a decider that, maybe let's veer into this direction a little bit more. And then 2019, Jeremy, at the end of the season, Jeremy kind of asked me and myself and Aideen, or the start of 2019? No, I think it was the end of that season, so running into 2020, myself and Aideen to come on board with him as kind of a trio of coaches with the group, So here we are after that.
There you go, yeah. What did you learn from the Masters that you did in UCD? That's
the Masters was brilliant. I really, really liked that Masters in UCD. Like there was maybe whatever amount of modules. I did it over 1 year, so maybe there was 8 modules. I can't remember. Was it 6 per semester or 4? But if it was 8, 7 out of the 8 were real top class. It was one of them that I was kind of looking forward to. I don't want to name. That I was looking forward to doing. That was a bit of a letdown. And that was kind of across the board. I'm sure it was reviewed after that, judging off how all the students on it viewed it. But it was a 2-year. You could do it part-time over 2 years or over 1 year. And I was kind of like, well, it was a Thursday evening and all day and a Friday. I was like, that's fine. But no, it was like, if it was 9 hours of in person, it was also 90 hours of reading to be done, which I hadn't factored in. And I was also working, coaching, training throughout this. And actually it was the busiest year of my life. It was probably my most successful year on the track. I performed my best, but I was never busier ever.
Do you think it was because you had so much going on outside of it?
Yeah, well, I literally had to have every day was filled in. I knew I had to be doing what I was doing at that time, or it just wasn't being done. So yeah, that was, I had to be on the ball, which, helps at times, but it wasn't sustainable. Definitely not. No, I did have 2 crocked Achilles by the end of the summer, but I did have a very successful year on the track. But it definitely was, because I was keeping busy, that I was able to tick all the boxes. But in terms of learning, I think sports psychology there, James, I can't remember James's second name, was the lecturer on the sports psychology module, but he was a former athlete as well. Not that it was steered towards athletics at all, but that module was brilliant, and it had the benefit of being on a Friday morning. I gave up on driving down to UCD from Santry very early on, so I ended up getting 2 buses down, which meant that the pre-reading I could just pop up on my phone. So I had the research papers read every morning going into them. So I was the only one responding half the time, but I definitely got the benefit of that by having the pre-reading done and was able to absorb it. But I think like communication, psychology and that kind of thing around coaching and training is something that I'd be heavily interested in anyway. So that definitely I took a lot out of. And even like that with the cohort on the course, like I was the only athletics person in there, but there was a real interesting mix of people there. It was generally, there was a lot of people who had just graduated from strength and conditioning, but outside of that, there was a lot of older coaches who had a lot of years of experience and very high level across multiple sports. And like that, you're just like, geez, these are the issues they're dealing with. What do we have similar to that we can figure out solutions to, and sharing ideas, that kind of way.
Yeah, brilliant. When you went in coaching, I'm interested how, not to say the masters or any kind of, not just education, but informal education, like mentoring or bouncing off people, like how did that shape your coaching from being an athlete? Like a lot of people talk about, obviously when you're an athlete, then you go coaching, you're coaching basing off your experience as an athlete. How does then education and learning and bouncing things off people change that?
Yeah, I think I definitely brought in some stuff straight away into the group with Jeremy when I was brought in as a coach. I suppose it was probably a way of me establishing with the athletes, because I trained with a lot of these athletes for years before that. I suppose showing them that I'm now coach rather than just being the guy who shows up and trains alongside you. So I brought in a lot of things that we did, kind of not necessarily at team bonding weekends, but essentially they were. But we'd make them very practical and useful for the year ahead. So it'd be, rather than, it wasn't a night down at Westport on the pace. It was, we went to the Wicklow Mountains, and Jeremy knew a good bit about hiking and stuff, but we had got some performance profiling done by the athletes themselves. Myself, Aidan and Jeremy, they went off on a hike. We went through each person's self-report, and then we correlated scores that we thought matched up. Then we did one-on-one meetings with them. We took a certain amount of athletes each. We talked through what they thought they were working well with, what we thought relevant to what they thought, and then where the gaps might be and what the actions might be for them to take going forward for the season. Then just we'd have like we did a lot of talk around like values and goals and beliefs around the individuals, and then what the group should actually stand for, working like a kind of a group code of conduct or a contract where there's certain issues or certain things that we think are core values or beliefs of the group. Can we agree on all of these, and then let's just remind ourselves throughout the year that these are what we agreed upon in September, lads, that timekeeping is important and phones are put away during the session, or music is allowed but only during these times, and things like that, where builds a good ethos around the group and builds a bit of professionalism and structure, and then like everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet. So those are definitely things that I picked up throughout the Masters and through talking to other people on the Masters. And they just kind of, suppose, set, because Jeremy had moved away from being a kind of a DCU affiliated coach as well, and then we were trying, Dublin Sprint came into being as a title on the group at that stage as well. So it is like, right, this is a separate entity to everything now, but what is it? So just put a bit of a framework around that, I think.
Yeah, interesting. How important are those little things in terms of the dynamic, the standard, the culture, in terms of making something professional? And I think it's always fascinating as well with when you don't have a lot of resources, how do you make something professional feeling? How does those little things make that?
I think, without the you don't need the resources to necessarily build a structure or an ethos around what you're doing. I suppose you just need the buy-in. It needs to be useful and functional stuff that you're doing. It's not just done for the sake of it. It's not just being a hard ass for no reason. There's a reason to be a hard ass, because if you miss 20 out of those 320 sessions in the year, you're not going to achieve your goals, and it's as simple as that. If we sit down at the start of the year and this is what you plan to achieve, I know what you need to do there in terms of the day-to-day, but it has to be done every day. We can't be veering off too much left and right. Now, obviously, there's things that interrupt those plans as well, but in general, it's a lot of hard work needs to be done to get to that level. And if you tell me you want to go a level below that, that's absolutely fine. We can do one less day, or you can miss these bits and pieces, and I won't be stressed about it either. But if we've agreed to hit the top, then we need to behave like we're going to the top every day of the week. And that can be hard as well in terms of, like I said, with resources on coach and athlete. But there's ways around it, to kind of set the standards for it. But I think if as a coach, this is probably one thing I'd have learned a lot from Phelim Kelly. I don't know if you know Phelim's middle distance and endurance coach. He has coached athletes from Mark English, Andrew Cosker, Brian Fay, Michelle Finn, multiple Olympians, European medalists, Irish records in 8, 15, 5K on the men's side. Phelim is a unique character, and he's always himself. So it's like, if you're not being authentic to yourself as a coach, you're going to be found out very soon, because you can't be, again, not to hark back to it, it's every day of the year you're coaching. So if you're putting on an act every day of the week, you're going to be found out very soon, or you'll burn yourself out. So if you're authentic in your coach and your behaviour, whether you're a hard ass or you're a little bit light and airy-fairy, certain athletes will be drawn to that and really respond to it, and certain athletes won't, and that's absolutely fine. You don't need to, you can't coach everybody, and you shouldn't want to either. You coach the athletes that work well with you, or that you can help the most, and they'll see that and respect that as well, I think.
When you talk about the setting goals and the plan, is that the benefit of sitting down with the athlete and they have that conversation where they want to, let's say I sit down with you and I want to go to the Olympics, and that's grand, but then I go to you about 3 months in, Jesus, I need to pare it back to maybe 2 sessions less a week because I've X or Y on. Is it the benefit then if they've planned to say, right, that's grand, Orla, but like you've written here that you want to go to the Olympics, so that's not going to happen if you do X or Y?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, if we don't have that conversation at the start of the year, then how do they know what the plan was initially, and how do we know where we wanted to go? So if we're kind of just floating through and they're like, yeah, I also want to win nationals next month, and I'm like, hold on a second, that's not going to fly when you were only training twice a week here for the year, and you've been working a full-time job and you're doing your masters and you're doing whatever else. Whereas if we sat down at the start of the year and you're like, right, national title is my goal at the end of the year, it's like, right, well, here's where we are now, here's where we need to get to get that, what do we need to do differently, or what do we need to keep doing? And if we tick all those boxes, it might happen. Somebody else can come along and have their day on the day and win it, but at least if we give ourselves the best chance to do it. But yeah, if that conversation hasn't happened in the first place, or it's not even written down, then, and like, very ambitious goals are always fine, I don't mind that at all, but once we're doing the work that we know is realistic and trackable towards it.
The people be listening and hear a sprint coach and they say, right, this is how I get fast. So tell us the myths and the secrets to getting fast.
Yeah, I suppose the one thing I know from working with team sports, I've worked with a lot of Gaelic footballers and GA teams, and rugby as well, individuals and teams, professional rugby players, that the thing that I try and get into them straight away is the speed is a skill. So if we're doing a speed session, this is a skills session. So it's not, now conditioning is a different story, and base fitness, you can get sick on those sessions, but you don't get sick learning to run fast. The speed session is a skills session. So trying to get lads to stop jogging back between the drills and the reps. I'm like, walk. I was like, we need to take recovery here, lads. We need to run fast. We can't be jogging back in between. We've changed the whole ethos of the session straight away. And in general, the players are great with that, and the managers and coaches struggle because they're looking at the watch and going, geez, what are we doing here? Or it's pissing rain. I'm like, that's fine. You can take 4 minutes recovery in the pissing rain and run fast afterwards. But if we're jogging back and trying to keep busy, then it's a waste of time. But yeah, it's a skill. It's a skill sport, skill event, and it's a skill as part of those team sports as well. Like in a Gaelic football match, I think it's like on the GPS 150 accelerations in a game. And I always say to them, like, how often do you practice your hand passing in the week? And they'll say, oh, we do a little bit probably every session. And I'm like, I'd never expect an answer to this one. Like, how many hand passes in a game per player? And then there'll always be one coach or somebody be like, I think it's an average of 8. And I'm like, right, that's fine. I didn't need the answer. And then I'm like, right, so you're practicing that every day. You do it 8 times in a game, and you practice acceleration how much in the week? 0. And you do it 150 times in a game. So if that's a skill we can improve by 2% or make more efficient, it means that acceleration number 5 is as good as, or acceleration number 100 is just as effective as acceleration number 5. And that kind of gets the point across a little bit more to them. And like I said, the players are right, if I can be better at this, at anything that's part of the game, then I can be a better player. So they buy in very quickly to it.
And then they'll get more hand passes because they can sprint down.
Exactly, they can intercept all the other hand passes as well, and it's all gravy.
Yeah, because that's actually, I heard a commentator before at a football match. I'll never forget. I was like, you were so wrong. He was like, oh, someone with pace, I think it was Lee Keegan, like absolutely lightning quick. He was like, oh, you can't coach that. And I was like, you've just put that sentence out when you've got hundreds of sprint coaches around the world. It's just funny. And it's just, that was the other thing I actually heard. I think it was Brendan, is it Glynn? He's the university coach. I was at their coaching conference last weekend, and he was saying one of the things I took away from his talk was about if you're sprinting or practicing sprinting, you need the recovery in between. Because if you start jogging back, like even simple thing of jogging, like it now doesn't become, you can't sprint at your top speed. Like, and what's the point? And he was like, this, he showed kind of a slide of the timings. And that's what I found really good. Even for example, me trying to sprint myself, I'd be like, nearly impatient standing there waiting to go.
Yeah, you're waiting around,
and you're like, fuck it, I'll just go now. But you really can't. You have to. Is that the biggest mistake you see from people that are trying to sprint and get faster?
I think they're trying to do sprint training, but they're not doing sprint training at all. So they think, and I know, like my brother played a high level Gaelic football in Leitrim. Now nobody will laugh at that, but he was a good Gaelic footballer and a good team in St Mary's and Carrick-on-Shannon. And like some of the sessions he'd tell me that they'd be doing throughout the years with different coaches, and I'm like, and then it's sprints at the end. But it's not sprints at the end. Doing 20 by 100 at the end of 30 seconds recovery isn't sprints. That's like you're doing aerobic work there, if anything else, and you've already done a full session as well. So there's no way you're getting what you think out of that. You're not getting faster by doing that. So everybody ends up becoming more of a 800 meter engine rather than a 60 meter engine, which is what they're looking for, but they're doing it completely the wrong way. So it is hard to get that in and get acceleration and really high intensity speed work in a session, because you do need the time to do it. But like when I work with teams especially, I say like, you have to warm up for every session. So that's fine. That you can take, you don't have to do my warm up, do a general warm up, be ready to run fast. And you can do your sprints before you do your main work. You can do 3 by 30 meters all out of 3 minutes and then get into your drills and now depending on what the session is after that, you don't want to be leaving them fatigued for it or at a high risk of injury, but you do your sprints when you're fresh. You do very little of them, do them very, very, very well, and that's the only way you're going to get better at it. It's not by going down and doing 200 reps of 20 meters. But like that, like the session we had yesterday on the track is 3 by 250 meters off 10 minutes, and like it's it's just over half a lap of the track 3 times, 10 minutes in between. So 750 meters of running, and so a lot of people are like, but that's nothing. Like we do 20 200s when our work on the pitch, but like we take about 8 weeks to build up towards that session, and the intensity is through the roof on it then, and we'll do that for a couple of weeks in a row, and then that develops into a next session. And I know lads, there's people that I've coached and remotely, and they have friends who play like are all-stars in hurling, and they've got them to jump into the session, and being ignorant themselves as athletes, we're just like, yeah, I'm doing this, just jump in, and haven't tailored it all to them. And the lads again were looking at it going, but it's only 3 runs, and then it's like after the first run they're literally hands and knees and puking. It's like, yeah, it's a different ball game though, intensity wise. So but you do like that takes a long time to build towards that. But just in general, like just to give the example of the recovery side of things, like that, even 10 minutes is short there. Lads were looking for 12 minutes yesterday because that's the level it's been done at. And it's the same for whether it's trying to get better over 5 meters or 50 meters. It has to be treated with respect and done very collectively and particularly to get the benefit of it.
I love that. It's all about the quality of the rep and the intensity within that 250, not and also the intent or the intention in the recovery and actually the in between. Whereas then I would deem that as professional level. Whereas then when you go to when it's not professional, then it's all about how it looks and it's not exactly how it's supposed to be. Is that the biggest mistake, where everyone's trying to make it look like it's supposed to be good?
Yeah, and I suppose like it's the same, it's kind of the Instagram problem as well. And I was going to go back to you saying standing around waiting on your recovery. It's the same in the gym. I'd always have the Casio on in the gym because I'll do set it squats or deadlifts, and you're like, right, I'll start the stopwatch. 60 seconds later, well, depending on the weight, it's on the bar. 60 seconds later, you're getting itchy to go again, and you're like, oh, it's only a minute, right? I do need to take 2.5 minutes here. You're getting bored. And then sometimes you're like, oh, 6.5 minutes is on the watch. So, without the watch there, you kind of lose context on it. So you do need on the pitch to start the watches on it. But Brendan probably had up something like 10 meters, 1 minute per 10 meters for the sprints. So, if you do a hard 60 meters, you need to take at least 6 minutes recovery after that. So it's a good gauge for that. But if you don't have the stopwatch on, you're not going to really, you'll go by feel and you'll have gone 3 minutes early. But yeah, in terms of looking good versus being actually effective, it's like anything in sport. It's it is the boring, repetitive motions that are the effective ones, but they have to be done very, very well. And it's the same with your gym work or your like the things that look mad on Instagram are what get the likes and the views, but they're not, in general, look at the coach who's putting this into place, who they actually coach, and it's generally nobody. So it's a case of, look at the people who are getting the results and what they're actually doing. And it'll probably look quite boring. It's the same thing day in, day out. There's variations. They're going through similar movement patterns. They're doing their same hand passes for it, but they're doing them excellently. They're striking the ball with the exact point of their hand that they want to. They're putting it in the exact place where the receiving player is going to receive it, whether it's a rugby passing drill. Like, all those things are done. There's nothing too crazy about them. It's just they're done, really intentional and very, very well.
Then we're going to have a coach now, I can imagine it, they're GEA or basketball or other sports that listen, they'll say, well, that's all well and good, but I only have, let's say, 2 hours per week with my athletes. Could they do let's say, if we're going by that rule of the 1 minute rest per 10 minutes, or 10 metres, of sprinting, let's say that is a 3 minute, 3 minutes in between the sessions. Could you then fit in the hand passing, or is it really total recovery?
No, it'd need to be total recovery, pretty much. Yeah, you would. It, like anything, if you're gonna, that's the thing you want to be focusing on. Now, I know in terms of skill development and the brain actually adapting to some of these new skills, maybe sequencing things in this works, like doing a drill into a different drill into a stride or whatever it might be, can help the skill acquisition side of things. But if it's a skill that we're working on, let's work on that skill, and it might, and like that, we're kind of microdosing the skill. If we can do a couple of reps of acceleration at the end of every warm up, then as coaches we can see, right, they're getting better at that, or looks a bit off. Can I get some feedback from a athletics coach on what do they need to do different or better here? Can we just implement that even? But just focus on that for that period, right, lads? We've done our warm up. We've got our mobility. We're feeling fresh. The weather's okay for a change. Let's do 3 decent accelerations, 20 meters here. Take our 2 minutes. That's 5 minutes of the session. I mean, I think that's reasonable enough in an hour. Or it might just be some sort of specific sprint drills that we know. And I would encourage you to go and find the coach to tell you which are the ones to do and how to do them, rather than going, here are 10 that I saw online. Let's do all of those and it'll take 20 minutes. Go to your coach and say, what do you have in the warm-up every session you do? Is there 2 of these you think would be useful for us? Give me the cues and what I need to look at. Put them in at the end of every warm-up, and happy days. We've at least hit some of the positions in the warm-up, rather than actually going through the full process of the event.
Yeah, I'm sure there's coaches or athletes listening saying, geez, I hope my coach or my players listen to this and take something from it. In terms of I'm always interested as well, I saw on your Instagram as well, the Dublin Sprint page around, or actually I think it was Nadia Power's YouTube video, some of the drills, some of the likes of the band works and stuff like that. How much is drill and technique based in your sessions?
I suppose, in the winter, I probably have about 4 different warm-ups. So we'd have 3 main track sessions in the week, but they have 4 to 5 running sessions depending on the athlete, and then plus some gym work. But we'd have kind of 4 main warm-ups, 3 main track warm-ups, where they're getting conditioning through those warm-ups as well, and we're working on certain areas. We're working from the ankle up, getting the stability, mobility, everything through, and just the general warm-up as well. But there's a lot of hard work in those warm-ups through the winter especially. But then say when it comes to a session so this week we were dialing up the intensity in terms of the speed work. So Wednesday and Thursday's warm-up, there was a group doing the same session either day. The volume of the actual work in the warm-up dropped by about a third. So rather than doing 4 by this drill, it was down to 2 or 3, and it leaves less fatigue going into the actual session, whereas previous weeks leading through the winter, I don't mind them getting a little bit of fatigue in the right positions, the right manner before they go into the session, because the intensity is a little bit lower. So there's a lot of conditioning work done through those warm-ups as well. Try not to be too repetitive in them, but then at the same time, this is the warm-up I like you to do on the day we're doing our 3 250s. If we're doing a different session, this is the warm-up I like you to do, because it suits what we're going to do next in general. And the same on the pitch, you want things to lead into, or on the basketball court or whatever it is. Your warm-up has to somewhat mimic what the event is going to be. So if it's going to be an aerobic event we need aerobic warm-up. If it's going to involve a lot of muscle groups, you need to get those muscle groups activated and switched on. So one thing always has to lead through to the other, but I suppose the volume and intensities of those also need to match the time of the year and what we're doing. But in terms of drills, then drills it's a bad word for some coaches. They see it as you can't drill an athlete to run faster, or not to run a PB or to kick a point, but it's movement patterns and reinforcing good postures really. So it's generally postular work that is what it's all for. How you interact with the surface, where your body is in space when you touch the ground. That's what it's all about really. And just trying to keep comfortable with that, whether it's some athletes need the opposite of each other, and you'll see that straight away by implementing certain things.
The running technique is always very interesting to watch, and there's different strokes for different blokes, obviously with the different cues, and people run differently. Yeah. I always love watching Sophie because she's so kind of regimented in what she does. It's funny if you were to kind of track, the way they can track a camera on someone's head and just see the head, she would hear like it's all the same. Yeah. How do you coach and just the different types of running techniques? Because obviously genetically that's also different, and physically in terms of the movement patterns, bodies react differently. Just on dealing with a group of athletes, let's say there's 20, and having different run strides. Yeah,
you kind of have to deal with the individual anyway, especially like anything. You have to coach the athlete in front of you, not the event or not the sport. And I'm always amazed by some coaches will always say, you see an athlete, you're like, oh, they're definitely one of Orla's athletes because you can see how they move. Going, how did they manage to do that? How do they produce these clones? And I'm not for that really at all. In general, it's more so like, are they running in a safe position first of all? Is it in a position that they repeat without getting injured, or whatever movement they're doing? Does it look like it should, and does it look safe? Then is it effective? Is it efficient? Are they accelerating well? Yes, but they're a little bit lateral, so they're losing energy or they're wasting time. So that movement looks good, but can we make it more horizontal? Just their postures through the air. Are they striking the ground in the right position? Where is the rest of their body when they hit the track? All those things that I'm like, right, well, this will make them faster, or it'll make them less likely to pick up a niggle or an injury. And, in general, it's for 90% of sprinters, it's, take pressure off the tendons at the knee and the pelvis position. So is the hamstring going to be under stress because of a poor pelvic position, or are we struggling to control at the knee? So we're a little bit loose, we're casting in front of ourselves, we're putting the brakes on, and then putting stress through the muscle groups around there as well. So in general, for me, like with Jack Rafferty that I coach, Jack's had to do a lot of work around control at the knee, especially to not reach to, because he's 6'7" as well. So he can cover a huge amount of ground. If he ran worse, technically he'd cover way more ground, but it'd be way less efficient and he'd be crocked again. So we don't want that. And that's one of Jack's big breakthroughs last year. He was the second man to run sub 45 seconds for the 400 meters ever by an Irishman. So that was his big breakthrough last year, was just getting a lot of those postures correct. And a lot of the cues I was using with Jack, we only revealed halfway through the year, he's like, yeah, I was actually doing the opposite of what you're telling me. He's like, when I think of that, I do this. And I was like, all right. I was like, what are you thinking of now? He's like, this. I was like, right, keep thinking of that. If that works, think of those cues. Don't think of what I'm saying. And I'll say those new ones to you. So I say he tells himself now, rather than with other athletes, I give the old cues and they work. So yeah, it's about, I suppose from the hips down, you want kind of very similar athletes. And what happens up top will be a result of what's happening with the legs. But yeah, you just want to see that the movement looks good and looks fluid and effortless generally, yeah.
Yeah, for such an individual sport, obviously there's within the Dublin Sprint Group, for people that don't know, it's a group of athletes, and you obviously coach the relay. Just how do you balance coaching the individuals in a group setting?
Yeah, I suppose we try and keep, I suppose, I don't know where that term should be, that no dickheads policy comes into play. Yeah, as the All Blacks, yeah, that's the general one. Even when parents and coaches will chat to me, and they'll be like, oh, we're looking at getting, our young athlete into your group in a year's time. What do they need to do? What times they need to be running? Whatever else. And I was like, well, first of all, are they coming to Dublin for college? It's like, oh, they're thinking about going. I was like, well, don't you go if they're going to college in Dublin first of all. Then let's see if they want to join here to join our group necessarily. And then it's a case of, in terms of PBs, whatever else, I'm like, do we have space within the group first of all? So if we've already got we've 16 in the group now, and that's probably the limit. But we like to have kind of an even spread across short sprinters and long sprinters, male and female. Like at the minute we have space probably for a couple of short sprinter females, but we don't really have any space for long sprinters in male or female. So if it's a case of an athlete that we think, look, if we get a couple more girls in there, that'll help the girls that are already there because they have training partners and they have competition. So if you fit the right box in our availability, and then you're not a dickhead, then you have a very good chance of us taking you on board. But we will do a few character references as well. We'll ask, some of the athletes will know them from previous, or somebody will have coach them before they'll be in a club that somebody knows them, and it'll be a case of that. But yeah, in general, it's about getting not necessarily similar. There's a lot of varying personalities as well as abilities and personality types in the group, but they do all get along very well. And I suppose that's interesting then for me in 18 as well, to try and manage how to work with all those different individuals, because again, I'm not in the business of creating clones, and I'm not skilled enough as a coach to do that either. I don't know if that's even a good thing, to be able to develop people to move exactly the same, but you don't want them doing everything exactly the same. And then they learn from each other's skill sets as well, because in the training week, there's 5-6 different types of sessions. You can't be good at all of them. Somebody's going to kick your ass every day of the week, and then the one day you get to kick everyone's ass, happy days. So, but then again with that, personality wise, and back to our group ethos and stuff, the day that you're on the floor, the other guy's going to pick you up, and that's vice versa. So you're never left behind.
In terms of the training in sprinting, the more I learn, the more, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's trying to find the line and not tip over the line, because then you get injured. Yeah. Is that basically what it is? Pretty
much, yeah. I suppose it's like any sport. It's like, you have to get towards the limit, and that's where you're going to be in your sweet spot of performance. But knowing where that line is, and that's the thing with new athletes coming in and stuff, you do have to ask around, chat to the old coaches, and say like, what sessions are they good at, what do they struggle with, how do they behave around certain things, and look, are they being honest with what they tell you in relation to how they feel, things like that. And sometimes you need to tell the athlete what they feel rather than vice versa, because they're not quite grasping. You can see it in their face before they realise it themselves, and that's not necessarily they're being dishonest. It's just the brain hasn't caught up with what the body is doing just yet, and that's when you can be like, right, your session's done. But it is, it's finding that fine balance of how are we going to get them into that sweet spot of real high performance for their ability. And in our sport, it's at that one moment of the year, it's that 50 seconds in your entire 4-year cycle to do it at the Olympic final, that kind of thing. So it's tricky. It is tricky, and it's, you're pushing, but you get to know the athletes very well in terms of how far you can push them. And just going back to like Sophie Becker there, like Sophie's bigger breakthroughs probably came, I'd say maybe it was probably around 2018, 2019, maybe 2019, 2020, when I used to see her training, and we get to whatever the 5th rep of 6 or the 4th rep of 6, and she'd be suffering and everyone would be suffering, but going through a tough time, and then that last rep mightn't be done, and then there was, I don't know, was it gradual or was it seemed to be quite overnight for me, where it was like one season to the next, where all of a sudden Sophie has got sick or is in tears after 4 reps, and then puts her spikes back on and does the next 2 reps, and that was the difference, a big difference. It's just that the ability and willingness to suffer through the hardship is a big skill, and you generally can't get away with it if you're not going to if you're going through the motions, and when things get difficult, it's tug out. That's not going to really work either.
Yeah, I think it is a skill. I don't think we talk about that enough as a skill. It's the same as speed. It's a skill you can learn. And like that commentator said, getting through the hard stuff is also a skill, and you can learn that.
And it's not just about misery for the sake of misery. It's like those 6 reps are what the session is designed for at this pace. You're able to do it. You have the ability to do it. So let's make sure we get it done. It's going to be hard. It's not, let's do 10 reps. So as I say, any coach, anyone can make someone tired. It's like, are we ticking the right box on the right day?
How do you get the feedback from the athletes, the ones that do understand what they're doing now, rate perceived exertion, that sort of scoring stuff? What do you do for that?
Yeah, so I actually did on my master's thesis, I used a lot of RPE, and I brought that in as well for a while. And Jeremy was good at technology. We were using an app. I think it was some app that DCU had as well. He had access to around kind of training, monitoring, daily reporting, things like that. So we did that for probably 2 or 3 seasons, and it just wasn't as useful as watching the athlete walk into the track and watch them their warm up and have a conversation with them. Now, you do require them to have a good bit of trust in you to tell you what's going on in school, at home, in life. You know what they're doing generally in training, because ideally they're at the track or gym with you most of the week. But I suppose when we have 16 is enough athletes for us, but it's not a panel of 30 or 35 lads who you only see for 3 sessions in the week, and you can't get around to talk to all of them, because you also have to talk to their 3 or 4 coaches that are there, and time becomes a very interesting factor then. But we've kind of veered away from the technology and the self-reporting stuff and gone more for the Aideen is a brilliant asset there as well, because I might be going getting stuff set up or watching a few drills or something, and I'll see her walking back with an athlete and having a conversation, and it might be very mom-daughter type conversation, and she comes over to me and says, yeah, well, actually this is this, because they might want to have that conversation with me, or they might reveal something to me they wouldn't to her. But she's very good at those types of conversations, or just saying, look at how they're dragging their left leg there today, and I'm like, oh geez, I didn't spot that at all because I was looking at the other 15 athletes, that kind of way. So yeah, she can get a lot out of them in terms of that kind of revealing stuff. But it does, it just takes a bit of being personable with them, and I suppose making them see the value in that, and in giving you all the information so you can make decisions for them. And as I always say, like I'm not really into remote coaching of athletics. It doesn't really work for me, and 99% of the time is because you want an athlete to train a little bit easier or do less, because you leave them to their own devices. And I know for myself, like the first year Jeremy was coaching me, I was still in college in Athlone, and excuse me, he was sending on the sessions to me, and it could be 6 300s off 3 minutes, and these are the paces, and I'm like, geez, this is not going well. That was the worst session ever. I'll send it on to him, and he'll be like, oh yeah, the lads only managed 4, and I actually pulled it back to 200s for the last 2 reps because we were all suffering. But I don't have that benefit because I'm down at home. I'm down in Athlone punishing myself and beating myself up for after 2 or 3 reps. It's way off. What's the point? What am I doing? Da, da, da. So yeah, it's just about getting the value of that feedback out of them and letting them know that, be honest with me, and you might have an easier ride here rather than you're not going to get punished for anything.
Yeah, it's trying to find the balance, as you say, especially with athletes that are either new or trying to impress, whether it's yourself or Aideen. Is Aideen the good cop then? You're the bad cop? Or?
Oh yeah, I'm always the bad cop. Yeah. Always have been, always will be, I think. I say I'm harsh. I try to be harsh but fair, but always harsh, I think. But again, I think they know that it's like anything. I don't do it out of meanness or punishment. It is, if you can do all these things that I ask you to do, you will be better, and you'll get to the results you want to get to, hopefully. You might not get the luck of the draw, but you have a much better chance. So yeah, I think Jeremy was kind of the good cop as well, and I was allowed to slide in as the bad cop, and I didn't mind that at all. And it's probably still the same. Yeah.
How do you find then going to the relay, a group of athletes that generally don't really probably mix that much until the competition?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, definitely. I think the 4x4 is a little bit easier in terms of that than the 4x1s, because it's much more technical in terms of like there's a lot of precision involved in the changeovers, and they need a lot of time together to work on those things. And it's not necessarily the 4 fastest 100-meter guys who slot in perfectly into the relay team, because some are running on bends, some people are better at the changeovers, things like that. Whereas the 4x4 in general, it's the 4 fastest guys or girls or mixed are the 4 that you can put on the line and get the best result out of. Obviously, we have certain things in terms of changeovers and tactics as well that we like to enforce, and there's we have set standards for that. But in terms of them mixing and things, it's generally fine. Like a lot of them, they're each other's competitors as well, which can make things tricky. But especially the girls squad, which has been so successful in the last few years, they all get along really well. Especially when it comes to, they may not get along all year long because they're racing against each other, whatever. But when it comes to European Championships or Worlds or relay or Olympics, again, we're here for the same goal. So let's get on with it and get ourselves ready. So they've built good bonds with each other there. I think it's definitely developing a lot more with the lads in the last couple of years. The strength and depth is there, and then that they see opportunities. New lads have come through, and they're all kind of starting to sing off the same hymn sheet as well. They've probably raced each other even more than the girls. The girls' side have probably spent more time on camps and squads together, and the lads have spent more time in the lanes beside each other, hopping off each other. So there might be a bit more ice to thaw there on that side. But no, there's really good atmosphere amongst the teams in that sense, and there tends not to be too many clashes of personalities. It's fairly straightforward. Let's all try and get the best out of each other for the team. Yeah,
you can tell from the post interviews with David and Gillick and stuff. What's the most important piece of the jigsaw in a relay, though? I'm interested. Like, because you got, like as you say, to the naked eye, it's get the 4 fastest runners in Ireland and sure whack them on there and they just throw the thing to each other and they win. But actually, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I think like you know, like with Charlene Mosley there, say like she performs out of her skin every time she gets the bat. She like takes a second off her individual PB or more when she gets the relay baton. Now,
which is fascinating in itself.
yeah, exactly, and the even the psychology around that, and that can be for some athletes just because they're not as good out of the blocks. So a rolling start is a huge help. That's why like Sophie's split would be slower than everybody else's, but hers is the truest reflection because it's out of the blocks. So she essentially does her race. Everyone else has a rolling start. So ideally, you're looking at taking a half a second off your second, third, and fourth leg based their PBs because of the rolling start. You don't have to wait for the reaction of the gun. But those are things that can be maximised as well, making sure to change. Like there's lots of time to be gained in those changeovers, even though I said already they're not super technical compared to the 4x1s. There still are, you want the baton to be covering the speed and that the baton covers more ground than the athletes. So if there's a space of a metre or two between me or you, that's the width of our arm span, then I don't have to run that metre and neither do you. Let's get the baton in the middle and you go. So there are small bits like that are there to be gained. They look insignificant early in the race, but then when it comes down to it and you lose, you come fourth by 1600th of a second in the Olympic final, you're like, oh, and we took 3/10 in that changeover rather than 2. You know, those things become significant very quickly. But in terms of like I suppose the big rocks of it is just the team aspect of it. I think is underrated, and there's certain countries like Belgium historically would be like unbelievable in the relays, yet on a world stage not dominant at all in the 400 say or the 400 hurdles. Now they'd have good athletes that have athletes making semi-finals and finals or winning European titles or European medals, but then when it comes to the 4x4, they're winning world medals, Olympic medals, like all through the years. They've got a really good history of it, and then they've got really good structures in place around building up that team. And you can see they're literally they've gone together, those 4 athletes, and that might be 3 of those athletes might have changed from last year. And it's like, well, how the hell are they back in that mindset again with each other? They're just out there to die for each other on the line. And I think like that's what our girls were doing in Paris. Like they were absolutely, and in Rome before that, there was no way any of them were going to let any underperformance sneak in there because it's a team at the end of the day. And the thing that always grates on me is people getting obsessed with the splits as well, because it's like if one of those people doesn't run, it's not a relay team. The only time that counts is the finish time. 4 athletes have to run. One athlete can't run 4 splits. So whatever their split is, that's for the coaches to look at to decide, do we need to make changes or can we, how are they performing, or to give them their dues for a great run. But it's not for people to be looking at online going, oh, well, they ran this, and this. Because again, there's all sorts of tactics and messing and people getting each other's way in the relays that can cause issues there as well. Like Kelly McGrory that ran the semi-final. Like Kelly's split might have been a little bit slower than she wanted, I think, but she ran such a good leg. Like she just put us in perfect position. I'm saying with the World Relays this year, there was some of the athletes that were a little bit disappointed with the time on the clock for the split. I was like, yeah, but the finish position and time was all we care about, and that's you got us into that position by you blocked off that other athlete, or you sat in nicely there, so you had the energy on the home straight to give us a clear run. So it's not quite black and white, which can be frustrating when people are focused on that side of things. I'm like, well, 4 of you had to run. If one of you didn't run there, then we didn't have a relay team. So yeah, it's the bigger picture, that side of things as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the team cohesion bit is always interesting. And again, as we said, you can see it in the post interviews, you can see it in the way they interact with each other on social media, the girls comment and, share things with each other. When you talk about the team and like where it can go, is the biggest, and I think the mixed relay has really propelled us and a lot of other countries, and we've spoken about this in other episodes, countries that traditionally might not be as big as the other bigger nations because of the now having the mixed. Like, is the mixed the most potential? Is it the girls? Is it the men's only? Like, where do you see the relays maximising our potential?
Yeah, I suppose the mixed was good because it wasn't being focused on as heavily by other countries as well. So some of the stronger nations weren't really putting as much into it, which helped the likes of us initially, especially like in Tokyo Olympics. We got to the final. Like the time we got to the final there, I think we ran quicker this year in Tokyo Worlds, but we were 11th. So that event has kicked on now. So and I think it's gonna level off closer to the same sex events. So it's probably going to get harder for us, but like our athletes are as good as ever, if not better, and the depth is even better than ever. So in terms of potential, like the lads team is obviously the one that has struggled to qualify for the major championships in the last couple of years, but I think next year and the year after that'll be sorted fairly quickly, because especially we've always had 4 really good guys at least. Having them all healthy in the same season at the right time of the same season was a struggle, but now we probably have 8 at that level, or if not more, and the top 4 have moved on again. So I think the lads will be catching up very, very quickly. The women's team is obviously still very, very strong, and then the mixed is just going to be taken from that and who's available, and the timetable is the usual problem with the mixed. So, if we could tug out everybody at full fitness at the right time, our mixed team will still be right up there with the very best. But are we able to, and has the timetable allowed it? And it's not, I know people would be looking at, oh, well, look, if Rashida or Charlene or Sophie focused on the mixed rather than thinking about their individual, but like what if, Jack or Killian or Chris O'Donnell or Conor Kelly have their first individual championship in Olympics or something? Should they be asked to sacrifice that as well? There's all sorts of decisions, and the individual athlete can make their own mind up. That's their career to decide that. And us as relay coaches then need to make decisions to suit the athlete as well. It's not just, we can't be begging Peter to pay Paul, and that ends up causing rifts between the camp, or it causes issues for our men's or women's relay later in the championships. So that balance across, again, it's why the bigger nations have more success. They have more athletes to pull from. Like the men's 4x4 at the Olympics for the USA, 4 new athletes in for the final. Like, it's a different story. How do you compete with that when we're putting the same 4 out again that have ran? They might have only ran 18 hours before or less.
Yeah. That's it. That's where the depth is coming. That's where it's exciting to be in this. I'm going to call it the golden generation or the golden era. Is it? Am I right?
Would it be? I suppose it is. Well, look at, Israel has set the national record the last 2 years in the 100 metres. The women's national record broken three times in 1 year there. The Rashida has broken 60 all the way through to 400 records. So that whole record book has been gone. Gillick's 400 is still there. Paul Hessian's 200 is still there. It's just about, but there's a lot of records that were just about, and then they stay just about there.
Good point.
So
that was just a shot at David.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Throw shade at him. But no, look, I think in terms of depth, definitely. And I've said it before, like people will say like there's nearly too many tracks around the country now, but tracks
definitely not.
No, there's not. There's not in Dublin for sure, or even access to them, but tracks give people the chance to run fast, and that's a good thing. And getting to run fast more regularly when they're young, and it's good crack running fast as well. So it's better than trying to run fast on a muddy field or in a car park or in a public park. If you can get onto a nice warm track or an indoor facility and actually spike up and let loose, that's fun, and repeating that makes you better at it as well.
And I prefer to do it 100 than an 800 or 400.
Yeah, likewise. I wouldn't like to try and sprint at 800 anyway. But even, I suppose in the golden generation, it's definitely our golden generation of relay teams as well. Like the men's 4x1 team broke the national record twice last year, and that had stood for a long, long time. I think that was since Sydney Olympics. So 25 years of that. And then obviously the 4x4s are really kicking on. So let's try and get the men's national record out of the way now next year or the year after as well, and we can definitely start shining our golden generation then. Yeah.
Why are we seeing, if it's not going to be the golden generation yet until that men's record is it, why now? Why are we seeing so much success? Is it just a number of factors coming together? Yeah,
I think so. I do think the indoor tracks have been a big benefit for sprinting. Like, even for I was doing commentary on the live streams for years on athletics. Rashida in the indoor in Athlone running 23 or 24 seconds when she was 14. It was 23.6 when she was 14 or 15, and we were just kind of like jaws on the floor going, who is this? Now someone like that has to come along. But then like Charlene was doing the same, running 23 seconds, which was really young. And then like in all the other events as well, like Nick Griggs, Sarah Healy, those kind of people like popping up, and they're phenomenons of athletes. But when athletics is becoming a publicised and popular sport, if you're very good at that age, then you can see the pathway of the other person that was very good at your age and where they went and how they made it to now being a professional athlete and getting free shoes every month and stuff like that, and incentives to bring those people on. I think success breeds success. I think also for the relays especially, and I suppose the sprints in general, but competition opportunities are major. And we've had there's a World Relays now. It's called the World Relays. I don't think it's called World Relay Championships because it's technically not a championships, but it's a fire for the other major championships. Initially it wasn't. It was brought in kind of just as an extra date on the calendar, and it was prize money, and it was a bit of crack, and it was in Bahamas, so it was a good incentive. But now it is like, that was one of our qualifiers for the Worlds and for the Olympics previously. That's where we got our auto queue for that. But to get athletes to train throughout the year, and competition may only happen 12 months later or 10 months later, rather than, okay lads, in April, May we're heading to the Bahamas. If you want to get fit, run fast indoors, get picked for that. That's a nice one to go to. I'd like to go there. Exactly, that's what I mean. You get to go there. Next year it's in Botswana. So we'll be going to Botswana hopefully in May, or maybe a camp before that in April. So, for Bahamas last year, it was Florida for 2 or 3 weeks and then Bahamas for a week. That's all right. That sounds good to me. And it was. And we got 2 teams qualified for the Olympics off it. So those sort of incentives are huge. And that goes way, way down right into the clubs. What are the clubs offering as incentives for the athletes as well? Is there a trip to Spain or Portugal for a training camp? Is there a team bus, a club bus going up to watch the Nationals? We bring in people up to watch the Morton games, and it's free, and we get to get autographs by Sarah Lavin and Charlene or whoever it is that's running. Those little incentives go all the way down, but the competition opportunities for the senior athletes then especially is a big one, because you have something to work towards, or kind of be on the outskirts of, and hopefully if things fall your way, you're all of a sudden, even if it's you think you're on the plane as a sub, things change very, very quickly when you get on the ground. I think having those chances to compete, or to having a chance to compete is always a good thing.
Yeah, that's it. And I think I've said it before on the podcast about the effect, and particularly the girls, I think have had, because of this women in sport emphasis we've had, which is great to see. I'm really jealous of young girls now that, they show up to their own races with the bows and the hair, and the indoor's been sold out. Like, where will we be in 20 years? Everyone talks about Sonia, and a lot of elite athletes now, even GA circles. I remember reading match program nearly 10 years ago now from a ladies football thing. It was, who is your role model? Sonia. What will it be in 20 years when it's like Rashida, Charlene, Sophie? In terms of like you've been around some top class athletes. My favourite question is, what separates the best from the rest?
I always go back to, Kieran McDonough is still our long jump national record holder, and he's full of wisdom, but he always says, when he's talking about it, he'd be like, I like Orla, she makes good decisions. And I was like, they generally make good decisions, or they're encouraged towards the right decisions in general. So if the decisions can be correct in all aspects of life, then it makes things a lot easier, whether that's just to have breakfast, what socks to wear, you don't get a blister, who to talk to about A, B, C, D, what coach to go to, what college to go to, what to put on your feet for that session. All those little decisions add up in the day and in the week and in the year. And like that, it's like anything. There's no session that you do to make it run a PB. It's the showing up for the 330 sessions in the year and doing them all back to back on the days that you're exhausted and doing them well is what gives you the result in the end. So it's the same for all those little decisions that you make throughout your year. In general, you'll see them doing things very, very well in all aspects. Not all aspects of life now. There's a lot of chaos goes on in everybody's life. But in terms of what they're getting out of their sport, it's like, right, am I working with the best of the best here for my nutrition, for my gym, for my actual coaching, whatever it is, my psychology. And I know, like Kate O'Connor has said, like, she's not actually working with a sports psychologist at all. It's the decision that she's made, because that might affect her negatively. She's able to control her own mind, and her dad and Tom, her coaches, know how to work her around that as well, to get her in the right headspace to compete. So that's the decision she's made. Maybe it'll change in future, and that'll be another good decision that she'll make, I'm sure. But I do think it's undervalued. It's like, what's on tomorrow? Right, I've got the track in the morning, the gym in the afternoon, and then I've got physio after that. Okay, go to bed. Or what, do I need to have lunch ready here? Do I need to have spare clothes put out? Do I need to, what are my logistics of the day? Actually, I've thought about it and made my decisions around what's happening tomorrow. And other than that, you see them, you're like, oh, they're actually just the same as everyone else. You have to just be jealous of what they were born with.
But that's it. I love that answer. The best decisions. That's never come up, but I'm 100% going to wrap that.
Yeah. And at least I quoted Kieran. I don't know where he stole it from.
Exactly. But that's the other thing when I ask about biggest misconception about elite athletes. It's come up pretty much every time. They're all just human. Yes, they've genetics and they've worked extremely hard, and generally they'll have some sort of resilience from a setback, and then they have success. But actually, at the end of the day, they're actually the same, pretty much, because they're human, as all of us.
Yeah. Well, what you'll find is we all know the person in school or in our club who is full of talent, but geez, if only they supplied themselves. I didn't have the head for it. They didn't bother. But that's the other side of the talent. Like, the natural born skills are one part, and then it's the ability to apply them and actually, do everything right around that is a much bigger factor. It's like what you're born with is only going to get you a certain amount of the way, and then it's like what do you do around that to make use of those skills that you're born with, or to develop them. That's the major role in it. And like that super 15-year-old basketball player you played with who just wouldn't show up to training, even if they applied themselves, they might be no good at 25 anyway. Okay, but you applied yourself and you view yourself as less talented, and all of a sudden you're the one that's on the Irish Fest, or you're playing high-level club basketball or whatever it might be. And I know that for myself, even with lads that were maybe even a year or two younger than me, but were competing against me in, say, schools and things. And I was just like, well, I know him and his brother, they're way more talented than me anyway. Like, look at them, they're doing the ABC. And then they find out 10 years later that like their dad was training them like they were Carl Lewis since they were 11, whereas I was training on a public park. I didn't wear spikes until I went to the Connacht Championships. And like, oh, well, maybe we were just, on a different stage of development rather than them being born with superhuman gifts. Yeah. But just the other thing in terms of for me as a coach, especially in terms of like what do the elites do differently? But I'll say like, and myself and Jeremy were talking about this, remember, in Paris, maybe even before Paris. I was like, we need to make a plan. The athlete needs to follow the plan, but it needs to be the right plan. But the middle bit is the bit that goes away a lot of the time. The coach in general, and like 99% of coaches who are worth their salt are doing a lot of planning in the week. They put everything in place to say, look, this is what I want you to do this week, this month, this year. Can you follow that plan? If you follow that plan, you do, and you succeed, great. If you follow the plan and don't, then coach's fault, new plan. But what falls away is the athlete or the player is not following the plan in the first place. And then we don't know if it was the right plan at all. So if it falls down in part number 2, then it's game over, because we don't know where we go from here. So I said to Jeremy, I think it must have been around Paris, is that, look, we had a plan for this year, and look, it has worked. And I was like, you have to make the plan. Sophie followed the plan to a T. And he was like, yeah, well, thank fuck it was the right plan. I was like, that's also a good point. But we wouldn't have known that unless she followed it, that kind of way. Yeah.
That was the other thing. I heard a line recently, I thought it was excellent. It was around kind of talent and having all the talent, but just having no focus led them to nowhere. Yeah. And they were on the trajectory of going somewhere in whatever they were doing. But at the end of it, if you don't have the focus, then it's actually pointless.
Yeah, and who has to provide them with the focus? Is it has to be athlete-led or player-led, or is it guardians or parents or coaches along the way, or teachers that say, look, this is great, you're flying it, but we do need to do A, B, C, D if you want to get to this where you're looking to go, or where we think you can get to. But if they're kind of full of talent, but it's all flitting off in each direction, then who's to blame for it? It's probably not the athlete in the first place, but they always have to put in a lot of work themselves, but some guidance goes a long, long way.
That's actually something that's come up a couple of times, and I'm conscious I do have some parents listening, a lot of coaches, but also parents have kind of said they've listened. Just, they do an athlete at home, or if it's a friend or somebody you're in an environment of a young athlete that has potential in whatever facet of life it is. What advice would you give them on supporting them and helping them nurture that potential?
Yeah, it's what you don't do is go onto a speed coach's website and say you want a one-on-one session for your 11-year-old child. Okay, because those emails come in a lot, and they either don't get answered or they get a bit of a harsh reality in response. Because what's the point of that? We're not looking to get Rory McIlroy chipping golf balls into the washing machine on the late here. It's, can we keep the 11-year-old involved in the sport first of all? Is it the sport they want to do? You were a good soccer player, they want to play badminton, then I'm afraid badminton's what they enjoy, let them do it. Let them try soccer, maybe bring them along, see that they enjoy that as well. But if it's not for them, it's not for them. And then I think it's a great thing to just build a good environment around them of their friends, make sure they're going somewhere that they're happy and they enjoy. And again, like the coaches and people within the clubs will be a big factor in that as well. Are there people there? You'll find good people in every club. Try and steer them towards them. in athletics, say, or individual sports, can we create some little bit of team atmosphere around it? Like our training group is generally a team. We got some kit last year as well. So John Russell is a physio that we work with, we bring on camps. He sponsored t-shirts and training tops and singlets for us. And probably if there's 10 people at training on a day, 6 of them are wearing them just as their training kit. It's kind of a uniform as well, and it's nice stuff, and it works, it's functional. But you build a little bit of that team around them. Like, none of them are even the same club in our group. I think there's 15 different clubs out of the 16 athletes all around the country. So if you can build, can you build a relay team? Can you build a cross-country team around the athletes in the club? Or just build, a group of 6 14-year-old girls there who do similar training. They might do the warm-up together, and then they go off and do their little bit individual sessions. But are they showing up to have a bit of crack and chat to people their own age with some different thoughts and views on the world? And they don't go to the same school together. They know different people, but they know them from athletics. And I know when I was growing up, my coach, John Connolly in Carrick and Shannon, he was, I think when I was like 15, and I maybe had got my first Irish Fest, and he was like, you know somebody from every county in Ireland? And I was like, yeah, I do. And then we went through and named them all. I was like, that's mad. Whereas, like, say my brother was playing Gaelic football. Now, he won national titles in the high jump as well. But he was playing Gaelic football. He knew every corner of Leitrim, and I hadn't a clue how to get which direction to face to go to any of them. But yet I knew somebody from every corner of the country from the sport. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's really clever. If there's an athlete listening that it's not just maybe athletics, like I'm interested in when they want to be elite in something, whatever that is, what are the kind of advice is the first thing that comes to mind, but even like mistakes you see them make when they try to push the standards of themselves in terms of physical capacity. What mistakes do you make, or what advice would you give?
Yeah, I suppose it depends on what the sport is. You have to find out what are the core components of the sport and the event, and try and build on them as much as you can, and try and keep the work you're doing similar to the sport. Not that you need to be in the gym with the hurl in your hand or anything, and in general, the stuff that looks like the sport with a load of weights on the bar is irrelevant. You can get the same thing by doing the more traditional work. That's why the same stuff recurs right the way through. I think I saw a picture on Twitter a couple of years ago of like from the 1890s, someone doing Nordics. They weren't called Nordics in the 1890s, but they're now called Nordics for their hamstrings. It's like, well, this always existed. It's just now it recurs again and again and again, and someone renames it. But yeah, I think finding what are the core components of success within that event or sport, and trying to just work on those capacities as much as possible within reason. And obviously it's not about doing the park run every week when you're 10 or 11 or 12 because you want to be a good 5K runner when you're 30. It's about just, what do I need to be doing now that's suitable for my age, where I'm at, but also keeping it enjoyable as well. Obviously, we're talking about elite, but you can't keep going if it's misery every day of the week. How can we make this somewhat fun? If I'm going to do a grueling circuit in the gym, can I drag somebody in to do it with me? Can I drag my brother, my mum, my dad to come in and even time me and blow the whistle? Make it a little bit social or enjoyable, that it's not just me suffering through this. But I do think like finding out, like it can be very tricky. It took me a long time to figure out what I believe to be like a suitable amount to do in a warm-up or in a drill session or in a session itself. Whereas I kind of always knew what people were doing, but I was like, I have no idea if they're doing 10 reps or 100 reps of this, or, there's another one. We were, as a young hurdler, we only got to the track when I was growing up. First of all, the closest track was Connacht's were in Galway, which is 2 hours away. Then Sligo was built. I think Tullamore was technically the closest, 90 minutes from Carrick and Shannon. So that'd be the time you get to put on spikes. But then Sligo track was built, so that's 45 minutes or 40 minutes. But I'd go up there to do a hurdle session. So there'd be hurdles there on the track. So I'd do 40 minutes of hurdle drills and then try and do my hurdle session. But sure, I was wrecked from all the drills. But I was like, well, it's hurdles. I got to get as many hurdles done today because who knows when I'll see them again. Kind of way. Whereas I'm completely flogging myself before I'm trying to get the quality work done altogether. So maybe I could have just gone up and done a drills only session and gone home again. I've got lots of conditioning done for my event. And then the next day I'll do way less drills and focus on the actual speed of my attack into the hurdle or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think try and find out what are the core components of elite in that sport and don't steer too far away from them.
What's the hardest truth or feedback you have to give an athlete that makes your job, like making coaching? What's the difficult side of coaching when you get and what's the hardest truth or kind of insight into being a lead athlete?
Yeah, I think sometimes there's not really an answer to some of the questions. That's the thing. It's like, well, look, I think we did everything right. I think you did everything right. And suddenly your hamstring has popped, or you finished fifth when we thought you were going to win it. And the thing I always say, the problem with our athletics especially is everybody's allowed to run fast. It's not just you. You're allowed to put in a great year of training and run a PB, and the fucking other 7 lads on the line are also allowed to run PBs. And it's not fair. It's like, you're the only one who should be allowed to run a PB because I coach you and you run for my group or your club. So like, why are they allowed to run a PB as well? So everyone is allowed to have their magic day, and you just hope that it's your magic day more often than the other people's. But yeah, it's cruel. You can do everything right within reason, or you can literally do everything right, and then just something happens that doesn't go your way, and that's, there's a lot of broken bodies along the road to success, and there's a lot of people who deserve lots and lots and didn't quite get it. And it's a good example there, like Brian Gregan, who recently retired. Like, Brian's phenomenal 400 meter runner, national champion multiple times, semi-finalist at World Championships. Didn't make an Olympics because the years that he was at his best were not the Olympic years, and the Olympics doesn't happen every year, unfortunately. So for that reason only was why. So the year he was born, essentially, the year he was 25 running his PB happened to be a different year to when the Olympics is. Whereas if he was born 2 years earlier, it might have synced up a bit better. And then also he didn't have the athletes around him for good relay teams back then. He ran the national record with the relay team, but they didn't have a team that could make the Olympics or even World Championships. So that's just pure misfortune of timing and environment that didn't work out. And it's not that he didn't train hard enough or anything else. He still ran until this year. He was the second fastest ever. So it's just bad luck at times. That's the long and short of it.
Yeah, Brian was great. I had him on a couple of years ago. Probably have to get him back on now.
Yeah, you should. Retired. Yeah, you'd have much better perspective on things now, I'm sure.
Yeah. How much of sprinting is a physical versus mental challenge? If you could give them percentages in each.
It's I suppose it's a very physical and skillful thing to do. That's the thing that's overlooked, I suppose, that people are born fast. It's like, but they're just fast. No, it's a demanding skill physiologically. Mentally, it's just about being able to put the work in, I suppose. And a lot of the time, the work doesn't look like a lot on paper, but it is to be done at such a highly cognitive level and demanding level of yourself that you'll know on a day, even if you're like, I'm not going to get what I need out of this session because I'm rep 1. I'm way off here. I'm not switched on. I'm not fresh enough, or whatever it might be. So it's about, I suppose, coach and athlete tailoring their week towards that day that needs to be 99% speed and intensity has to be a day that we've tailored towards being at our very freshest. So I suppose it's physical. It's a physical activity, but mentally to be able to be prepared to be in the right headspace and to be physically ready through your decisions mentally takes a lot. It's hard to give a percentage, but it is a very physical and physically demanding thing to do. And like anything, it's like, the best conditioning for your hamstrings is to sprint. So obviously it takes a lot of toll on the body. And like the athletes will tell you, like, you can go on a hammer track session fast and you'll be slower than you would after any gym session, because it can be like going through a car crash. But that's generally a good thing. It means you're moving in a new capacity that you haven't before, and now body adapts to it and goes again.
That was the other thing Brendan was saying at the conference. He was like, would you believe if you just kept sprinting, you'd get faster at sprinting? It was exactly. It's kind of dumbing it down for people that overcomplicate it. Actually, one thing I meant to ask earlier, I heard it online, if you sprint within a week, you lose a bit of speed. Is that true? I think that was the context.
My general answer would be no.
Okay. How quick do you lose your speed then?
Yeah, well, you don't lose it as quick as your aerobic capacity, and you can get it back. So I think within 10 days you start to lose a couple of percent of your aerobic capacity. That's why the distance runners take about 3 days off in the year, and the sprinters take 6 weeks. So it's I tend try to get them to take at least a month off, and that'll be 2 to 3 weeks of, I don't want you exercise, I don't want you walking to the fridge even. And then it's kind of a week or two or a week maybe of go for a swim, go for a walk, do whatever, go for a hike or whatever, and then we'll give them 2 weeks a bit to do themselves and then back into training. But I know lots of athletes, and I know myself even. I've missed. I had an Achilles that I had in 2018. I ended up on the bike for 3 weeks with it, and then when I came back, I equaled my PB like a week later. So I didn't lose my speed, but I was trying to replicate sessions on the bike, so I was obviously still moving fast and getting a bit of a physiological component similar, but I wasn't with my feet on the ground at all. So I didn't lose my speed in the week. is the short answer to that.
Yeah, I was like, I came home, I was away for 2 weeks, and I was like, geez, I've lost that bit of speed now, and I don't have much of it.
Yeah. No, you can get it back quickly again. Yeah.
I didn't have enough speed.
Even
to
if you
lose,
lost, but I was going to say maybe I was never fast in the first place either, so my PB was easy to equal.
Yeah.
But no, you'll blunt it, but you can sharpen it pretty quickly again.
Yeah. I'm interested. Men versus women. Have you noticed the difference between? Everyone talks about men will run through a wall without asking why, and women want to know why before they do it. I'm very much generalising that and probably butchered it. Yeah. What's your take on men versus women, the difference in your approach?
Yeah, I think like that's where athletics is a great sport, because it's never even really thought about in terms of I know there's women in sport movement, and there's can't see, can't be, and all that, and that's all brilliant because it literally is that. I know my niece was at Gaelic, she goes to all the Gaelic football matches with her older brothers, and my sister brought her up there to the pitch last week, and she was like, oh, the girls play here as well. And she was like, never even thought that she wouldn't know that girls played football here. Like, she hasn't seen them on the pitch. She's gone to 40 lads matches and never seen the girls play. But in athletics, like it's literally 50-50 split, I think, even in membership in Athletics Ireland. And like if someone performs well, like we'll come off the track and she'll be like, geez, did you see that 800? And they'll be like, yeah, I can have like Sarah versus Sophie O'Sullivan versus whoever. You won't even have to say, did you see the women's 800? Like, it's not even, it's an unconscious, it's the opposite of an unconscious bias, whatever that is. Yeah. So that's fantastic for us in our sport. But then in terms of like the approach to training and competing, there are differences in it. But it's not necessarily, it's just personality things again. It's like, it is how you approach the athlete is a little bit different sometimes. Maybe a man can be a bit more honest with a man in terms of how they ask them to train. Maybe I'm a bit harsher with the lads than I am with the girls, but at times I'm afraid the girls get their harsh realities as well. But you might have to just be that little bit more delicate around how you approach it with them. Or, 18 might speak to the lads in a different way than she does to the girls. And yeah, that kind of, but it is, again, it's just back to individuals and personalities. But then physiologically, there's a lot of differences as well. Like some of the girls are willing to work an awful lot harder than the lads. And sometimes they need to be peeled back a lot more as well. I find, especially in our group, there's certain athletes where I'm like, right, those girls will literally run through a brick wall, but I really need to encourage the lads to approach the brick wall. But then in terms of actual training effect as well, I think the girls can endure a lot more than the lads in terms of workload, because the lads can reach a higher speed and it causes more carnage in the body and they can't recover as quickly. So they can, obviously the girls can reach, they try and reach 100% of their top speed and capacity. It doesn't seem to have quite the similar or the same full physiological effect in terms of how they recover from it, just because the lads can run at 11 meters per second and the girls can run at 10. Now obviously they can empty themselves. That's not to say they're not trying hard or putting in full effort and getting the most out of themselves, but they seem to be able to bounce back that little bit quicker, I find, than the lads can. And I know Dan Paff would speak about that with gym work as well. He thinks that, like, historically he's found, and I know with Sophie and with Jack, say, or Killian, for their gym work, he said like the girls can recover 3 days later after a heavy CNS hit in the gym, where the lads take 10 or 11 days. And I'd find that as well. Like Sophie would do, so say in Paris, we did a gym session, or in Budapest the year before, she had her races. No, Paris, not, she had 5 races in 7 days. We didn't get into the gym, but even in Tokyo this year, she raced at the start of the week with the relay division, and then she was raced at the end of the week with the women's relay. So we did a gym session on the Wednesday as well, and that sets her up nicely. And she had her better runs at the end of the week. Whereas Jack, say when you're on his PB, his last gym session I think was 11 days before that, and that was intentional. So he had a race the week before. We trained through the week. He did a gym session on the Thursday, and then the Saturday week was when he was going to run his European Team Champs. That's around his PB. And I just know from previous years that that's what works for him. If we did a big gym session, say even a Tuesday, which would be on a normal race week, we might gym on a Tuesday or Wednesday, race on a Saturday. If we're looking for that to be the big day, then it needs to be another 4 or 5 days before that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The kind of
now maybe that's
just your
nonsense that I've made up, but
Sophie's just a beast.
I trust what Dan Paff says generally as well, and then I've seen it physically with the athletes that I work with. That tends to be the trend that it goes with as well.
Geez, that's interesting. You managed to save about halfway through. You said maybe it's just you were like halfway through, you were like, oh, because the men went a bit quicker, that's why they need to recover a bit faster. The girls were loving that, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the girls are lazy. No, as I said, the girls are more able and willing to absolutely smash themselves a lot of the time and get that every little bit out of themselves. But I think they're also able to recover that a little bit quicker, and that might just be because the attrition on the body isn't quite the same. Yeah.
What did you learn from Paris? Those games, going through it, being in a big final. I was asking Jeremy about all this as well. Just interested to hear your insights.
Yeah, Paris was hectic for me, especially as well, because I was there with Jack and Sophie there, and they were obviously Sophie raced a lot, and then they were training. Jack was training through the week as well. So, and then the relay squad. So it was kind of like it was every day, either at the training track or the competition track, and then I was working with a few of the distance runners as well. So going to watch their races and meet them for sessions and stuff as well. It was full on. In terms of what I learned, I suppose it's something that I kind of tried to get into the relay girls' heads before. I wasn't technically the coach with the relay team last year, but like before, maybe even in Bahamas at the World Relays, I was just trying to get into their heads. It's like, lads, you've got a lane out there, same as everybody else. So whether you like these people or not, like literally, who gives a F about them? Like you've every right to win this as they do. So why are you like bowing down to people here? Go out there and kick their ass. Or like snarl at them. I don't care if you're friends with them or not. Invent some beef between you and everyone else. Go out there foaming at the mouth and let rip. Like I was just trying to, I found it a little bit passive sometimes in their approach going in. They're just kind of all a bit, I'm like, it doesn't need to be the dressing room, brawl here to get you out going. But you do need to get a little bit fired up for this here because there's big opportunities there. And like that, it's just like, if you can put the team in the right environment, with the right belief and the work done in advance, they all got so much more out of themselves when they went into that final. Other than that, what did I learn? I suppose it was good. It was good for myself and Jeremy and Aidan and the rest of the group that, the work that we are doing is the right stuff we're doing. It works. It's set athletes up to be the very best on the very day that matters. And I had feedback from some other, I'd say, higher level coaches than me in other sports, that were just saying, that was so impressive that you managed to, the only day that matters in the 4 years and that only minute that mattered of those 4 years was when they were at their best, which is very impressive. And I was like, that actually is impressive when you think about it like that. It's like when you ask an athlete to run at a certain pace and they do it exactly, you're like, how do we know how to run at that pace? But yeah, that was something, I suppose, it was a learning that, right, what we are doing is heading the right direction. Not to sit on our laurels with it or anything. Obviously, every season is evolution. The athlete is different today than they are tomorrow. But just in terms of, where we're at now is on the right path.
I want to ask about that in terms of, because that's another skill, peaking on the day that you need to peak, whether it's the Olympic final, an All-Ireland final, National Cup final, international game, for whoever's listening. How do you do that? Yeah.
I suppose it's about doing another, back to Dan Paff again. It's like he's always looking for ways to train less. So what's the minimum we need to get away with here to be getting what we need out of it? And when it comes closer to, the All-Ireland final or the competition that matters in the year, obviously less is more, and we need to be as fresh as possible. We're still, in the best physiological shape that we can be all year long at that point. How do we get there is by doing a huge amount of work in advance to that, so that we have this big base to pull off. And like that's what Sophie suffered with last year because she missed all the winter with her. So she didn't run a step from the final in Paris until the 28th of January. She didn't run one step. So you miss all that workload that carries you through. So you've got that big engine built and you have to kind of freewheel through the summer a lot of the time. Then you get back, there'll be points where you can top it up. You can get, same as any kind of gym approach, it's like you can do a big volume of gym work. You need to taper off before the big event. But if we taper off and we're not getting the same level of work done every week, you get weaker every week. Where can we find a chance to top that up? And it's the same. We do the same with our gym work. Come to when the race season kicks off, say in May, it'll be 3 weeks of very light load in the gym. Not light load, but light volume overall. And then I'm like, right, well, we need to find a point where we can get 2 big gym sessions in here to top the tank back up again, because otherwise you're getting slower and weaker every week. Yeah. And you find that that happened to me when I was a younger athlete as well. We'd tailor off the training a bit. The intensity would go up, but we were lacking all that volume. So week 1 and 2 or 3 running really fast, PBs, we're like, Jesus, this season is only going to get better. And then by week 6, we're all of a sudden running slower because we've emptied the tank of volume and workload. So it's about finding those points to have like a bit of an undulating season where there's peaks throughout, without that before that main peak that you can carry on through. But yeah, it is just about getting all the work done in advance that you can live off that then, hopefully.
If I ring you in 10 years, December 2035, what would you like to say that you've achieved within your role with Dublin Sprint and with the relays?
I'd like to Olympic medal would be nice of some sort. Yeah, more national records, an individual national record definitely for sure. Whether that's in a 400 or something else, but 400 is probably the closest at the minute. Jack is 2/10 away, and Killian will have a word with him for that as well. But yeah, I think an individual national record, more medals, yeah, individual medals especially. Relays are fantastic; they're great competition opportunities, and they give people the incentives to keep going. But individual medals are what everyone is in it for. It's an individual sport at the end of the day, so that would be nice. For myself, to be still coaching would be nice, I think. To have made it even more of a career, to have found a way to buy a house in Dublin or elsewhere would be nice, if coaching could provide that. But no, yeah, I think just that Dublin Sprint is still going in some capacity, that we've built we've a good foundation of it there now, that it can keep growing. I think like Jeremy is 2008, I think he started with it. So, we'll get it to its 20-year anniversary in 2.5 years' time, and then see can we get it to its 30th anniversary and bring him back then, maybe sub him back in. But yeah, no, I think just keeping the ship on the road and just kind of developing that framework for a good structure for athletes to develop in, and coaches.
Brilliant. I'm going to move on to the sideline 7. Conscious of time, we've been going for ages. I don't
Okay,
even know.
yeah.
If you need to go, let me know.
No, good.
Fly through. Question 1, your favourite quote?
I have a quote on my whiteboard that I think Haley Harrison, so Thomas Barr's coach, well, Thomas retired now, but it was, and I think I said it to Haley and she had never heard it before, but I think it was on a course that I was doing with her. I figured it somewhere along the way, and it was it's better to act your way into a new way of thinking than think your way into a new way of acting. So if you're struggling to get out of bed in the morning, there's no point in lying in bed thinking about getting out of bed. You just have to get out of bed. And if you keep getting out of bed once the alarm goes off, then your brain will adjust to that. So I think if you can just go through with the action, think later in a positive way, it's much better than thinking about it and wait until the perfect moment to strike.
Yeah, that actually came up. I brought up in Damien Hughes' episode, recorded him during the week. I got a good line during the year. I was chatting to someone about a few things, and they said, act your way into the feeling. Yeah. I had a load of injuries and kind of pared it back down to injuries were stopping me because my brain didn't want me to get injured again. Yeah. And you just have to act your way into it.
Yeah, and that's like the last stage of injury is the apprehension phase, where it's like you're not willing to actually go through with it because what if it happens again? It's like, well, sometimes the brain has to take a back seat and you got to go for it.
Absolutely. Question 2, best sporting event you've been to. Pick one as a fan and one you've been involved in.
As a fan, probably Paris. Has to be Paris, I suppose. The Olympic final there, you're watching somebody you've coached for a few years go out there and do the business was good. Being part of then, I suppose I was part of Paris as well, but with the European Games in Minsk in 2019, I suppose a lot of those countries now here like, oh, that's mad I was there. We never allowed to go back to Belarus. But I was competing for Ireland there in the hurdles, and packed. It was like 25,000 people in the stadium, and it was a random draw of teams you were against. It was heats, but it wasn't. It was a strange setup of a competition. Anyway, I had the Belarusian guy in my heat, so when we walked out onto the track, literally the 25,000 people were roaring. And for what I think I told myself in advance, anyway, I was like, I'm going to pretend they're cheering for me. Again, I was acting my way into New Year thinking there. I was like, I'm going to pretend they're cheering for me. And I literally was like, they're all, I whatever way I'd switched my brain onto, I was like, they're here to see me. They partly were, but there were more to see the Belarusian guy in the lane beside me. And like, it really lifted me and gave me good adrenaline. Yeah. So, but that was just a cool competition in general. It was probably the closest to being an Olympian I'll ever be, just in terms of, there was an athlete village. It was multi-sport. It was just a cool environment, different championships. Yeah.
Deadly. Question 3, biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
Coaching wise, I'd say as an athlete, I've had some major injuries really kicked my ass. They were tough, but I suppose they've helped me now in terms of the people that I work with, helping them through it. As a coach then, setback probably for Sophie coming back from Paris and having, I was in Mexico at the time. She texts me and goes, "I've got bad news and very bad news." And I'd left my iPad somewhere. She's like, "I couldn't find your iPad." And then I was like, "What's the very bad news?" Like, "I have a stress fracture in my foot." I was like, "Right, that is bad news." But so that was a big setback for her, coming like the very peak of your career, and then it's all of a sudden you can't walk. So, but dealing with that, then like I say we went on training camp in South Africa, and it ended up being like 5 hours a day with the Alter G, onto the bike, into the gym, into the pool every day of the week. So a lot of work for me and her, but like we learned so much from it, and figured out a lot of things. So big setback in her career, but then came out to the World Relays then in May and ran the fast lane the whole competition. So it was very positive in the end. We didn't quite have the year you wanted then. Like I said, all that training, missed training catches up with you, and then she had a hamstring injury as well because of that. But it was a huge setback in her sporting life. And as we were saying before we started, like Sophie's had made a decision to go full-time as an athlete then, and now all of a sudden you're not an athlete because you can't put your foot on the ground. So dealing with that from the training side of things, but also the person side of things, how to deal with what she was going through and try and convince her that, we can get through this, while trying to convince yourself that you can get through this as well. Yeah, but no, it was looking back, obviously we handled it quite well. We did good things and things that we could do better, but we got the most out of it, and she did very, very well, and I think I helped her along the way as well.
Absolutely. She's another guest I have to get back on and see how she's developed over the last couple of years. On the flip side, biggest achievement on or off the track?
On the track, I'd say, so I think one of my favourite achievements was winning the Irish Schools 400 metre hurdles. That was my first schools gold, and I was a year out of my age group, and I ended up injured the following year and couldn't do it. But that was a big one. I was like, whoa, schools was a different one because the athletes from Northern Ireland would really take that very seriously as well. So you'd have a lot of even some of the lads who were kind of focusing on rugby but were super talented would make a big effort to get down for the Irish Schools where they mightn't for the club competitions. So that was always a bigger deal in the year than anything. So I think winning that first Irish Schools title in the 400 hurdles was a really big deal for me. But then also like winning a national senior title and representing Ireland obviously was they were never on the horizon ever, so I can't even grasp what they mean now even. So I'll stick with my Irish Schools title because that was always, this is maybe achievable, whereas running for Ireland never was. That just kind of happened in the end.
That's interesting. Question 5, advice to your 18-year-old self.
See, the thing is, like, I'm where I want to be now, so it's hard to say do anything different. I'm just keep going with it, keep stick at it, keep showing up. And I think that's the thing with coaching as well. It's like, unfortunately, you have to just be there every day, and that's the only way to do it. You can't half-arse it. Yeah. So, 18-year-old self, you were injured all last year. You're going to be injured all next year. You're going to have a great time in first year and you will, but yeah, make sure you get back into the spikes then in second year.
Very good. Question 6: dream dinner guest and why?
Arsene Wenger. Yeah, just why not? I'm an Arsenal fan. He was my manager for my whole life. Maybe should have left a few years before he did, but that's so be it. But yeah, I think he'd have a lot of knowledge that I could learn from, I think, and make use of in my daily life. Yeah.
Brilliant. Last question before I let you go. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
What chapter would this be called? I'd call it something stupid like the next chapter, because as we were saying before, I still competed in the nationals last year in the hurdles, but it's probably not too many of those not too many more of those ahead, and there probably wasn't supposed to be too many more of them ahead a couple of years ago. So it probably is a transition phase for me now of going from player manager to just manager. So yeah, I think this is we're entering a new phase, I'd say.
Brilliant. If there's anyone listening that wants to reach out, but not if you want a one-to-one session for your 11-year-old, where is the best place to do that?
You can reach out for that as well, but you might not get the answer you want. I suppose like my website, godspeed.ie, so I have my services there, but it's not necessary that I'm trying to drum up major business. It just kind of has to be a placeholder to show I'm a real person. But Instagram or the website, you can email through the website, or you can catch me on Instagram, Gerard_OD_, or the Dublin Sprint page is probably even better to pop on there. I don't have the notifications on for any of it. I hate Instagram, but it has to be done. It's propaganda. You can pop on there and shoot me a message, or get me through the website either, or shoot me an email. And yeah, I'm happy to chat to anybody, whatever you want to know or gain from it.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'll be sure to link it. And I have to say, I do love Godspeed. That's a good name.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, my initials are GOD, just for anyone that's wondering what's going on here.
Brilliant, Gerard. Thanks for your time. Really enjoyed
No worries.
it.
Thanks for that.